Right, let me talk about the permissibility of the five wife thing, right? Again, right? Now, I can only give my view. The Quran states something, and I am no one to dispute what the Quran says. Quran is a revelation directly from Allah, God, right? I can give my point of view. My point of view doesn't matter in the grander scheme of life, right? My view is negligible. So the Quran makes it permissible for right for a prophet, right, or a Muslim man, right, to have five wives, right? But there's condition under which these things are acceptable or not, right? Um, Now, first of all, right, let me get this clear, right? This concept about faithfulness and being faithful to one person and this sort of thing, right, is a Christian concept as well as a Hindu concept, right? So, like the concept of Ram and Sita example, right? Concept of they being faithful to each other regardless of what you're faithful. Concept of the Proverbs 31 wife and faithfulness according to Christianity. A man and a woman faithful to each other, right? And they stick with that, right? Regardless of what, right? It's a Christian concept, but Hindu concept as well, right? Now, this concept about a Muslim man having five wives is a new thing, right? To many people, right? Um, I don't like it personally, right? But it is something that people could explore, right? It is something worthy of exploration under certain conditions acceptable within the religion itself, right? Because if you go to run away with that, it can turn into all sorts of things that Allah would not find acceptable in the least bit, right? So let me just discuss this, right? So, one, right? You need to be fair and equal to each wife. Well, first of all, you need to ensure, right, that all wives are comfortable with our fact and our reality, right? So there's a situation, right? You can have five wives to seven wives or so, right? You need to ensure A is wife one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, right? Okay with this reality, right? So that has to be one, right? All of them need to be comfortable with our reality, right? So there need to be honesty, and that's the principle, right? Rather than faithfulness, stuff was right. The principle in this context is what honesty, right? That is one, right? Two, equal treatments are all wives, right? Equal treatments, right? So yeah, man say you have a property, right? A stretch, a property, apartment property or something, right? You need to be able to provide fairly and equally materially, right? Material provision, right? Of for five wives, right? Now there are a lot of people with resources in the world capable of doing this, right? Say for example, we use a dollar as an example. Say you have $6, right? As an example, right? You need to give wife one, provide wife one with a dollar, provide wife two with a dollar, and you go straight up to five. Why? And you keep a dollar for yourself, of course, right? So you give equality a dollar each, right, to each wife, using a dollar as an example, right? You give each wife $1, right, as an example, and keep a dollar for yourself, right? If you have $6, that's how that material compensation need to go. No cent more, no cent less, right? Now let me move to the topic of love. Could you love, right? Could you love, right, five wives equally, right? Could you provide sexual intimacy with five wives equally? Could you provide emotional support to five wives equally as one man, right? As one man, could you provide emotional intimacy to five wives? I'm not saying that I have Muslim men who can't do this. I just asking, could you do it, right? Could you do it? That's my question, right? So I not discounting your ability to do it in the least bit, right? I'm just asking, are you capable of fulfilling this, right? Are you capable of fulfilling emotional intimacy with five different women, right? Simultaneously, right? Are you capable of sexually satisfying five Muslim women, right? And go down the line, financially providing five Muslim in an equivalent manner, right? So this is what need to be asked, and my suggestion in this lifetime for people who battling this thing, right? Hey, boil it down to about two wives now, right? If that is the conversation that we need, and this lifetime, right? Hey, if it can reach a point where you're unable to provide for five, right? Boil it down to a little bit less, right? on if you cannot do, because because I haven't really met a man yet who could emotionally be of emotional support to one wife could, right? So this be my point. Yeah, the material compensation is one thing, right? And there are many people with adequate resources financially to do these things. But then what about, like, a woman has so much different needs, and so does a man, right? A woman has so you, in a sense, your needs as a man being fulfilled, because, well, yeah, I don't want to make a joke out of this, but I have a chutney song about it, right? I want to clean, I want to cook, I want to sweep, I want to mop, right? And I really don't mean to make a joke out of the situation, because it's not a joke, right? Because it's a issue that I kind of battling right now, right? Is a serious issue, right? But that is where it boils down to. That is essentially where it boils down to. Like, I have want to sweep, want to cook, want to mop, want to what, right? So it's just a thing to question, how how to go about doing this. And then in the next context now, we have, like, hey, does this even matter? The world is in a state of war, right? All people sometimes concerned about is, hey, if they could huddle together and get a space on the earth, right? So that's the next part about it, right? So that makes it even a different topic now, because if it have wars in these countries, all these things going on, like, people not even taking on this as an issue, right? This becomes an issue. This becomes an issue in the Western world, that the Westerners talking about. And me, I'm in the West Indies, right? In the West Indies, I'm talking about this issue. But then it's actually a non-matter to Muslims who actually going through the hardships in the countries in which they're going through the hardship. It doesn't even matter, right? So why even talking about this? Why is even a conversation? It shouldn't even be a conversation when people are actually literally running from bombs and all these kind of things, right? So there's I mean, so this why I thoroughly, like, that was say I could give my view, but my view is actually nothing, right? At the end of the day, because your circumstance really um determine that reality, and in those cases where you are in a situation where you cannot control what's happening in the external environment, the environment is actually dictating what's happening, right? So this conversation, like, if there's something taking place in the Middle East, a war, right? My conversation here becomes negligible. This issue here that I'm fighting, is it doesn't mean anything, because in the grander scheme of life, something bigger is going on that renders this conversation negligible, right? So faithfulness don't matter. And this is what I'm saying, right? When Britain chose to fight that war against me, right, with regard to faithfulness and relationship and romantic relationship, and our war was waged against me for being unfaithful, right? And I chose to fight back, right? I chose to wage back a war based on, hey, you're blaming me for being unfaithful and causing hurts to black and brown people, right? But hey, you all you all were responsible for causing massive damage, psychological, materially, and all possible ways, right? For the whole of history, for the whole of black and brown history, right? So it's not a blame game, but what I say is a romantic love in that context and faithfulness means nothing, right? In a state of a war, or in the context of our world at war, right? In the context of our world of war, right? My faithfulness, if I cheated on two men, three men in the past, my faithfulness or unfaithfulness means zero, right? It renders the conversation irrelevant in the state of our world that is at war, right? Because there are a lot bigger issues than my romantic issues. It have a lot of issues that's bigger than, hey, if I cheat on somebody in the past, right? And so and that is why Britain will crumble. Right, that's why Britain will crumble, because you choose to wage a war on me based on an issue that's actually very, very minor, and to judge me on an issue that's very, very minor in the grander scheme of our world at war, right? When it have issues that people be battling, running from bombs, right? They choose to judge me on an issue, right? That is very negligible in a way, in a way that Christians and whites responsible for funding wars and encouraging wars, right? And making people run, children and people and women run from bombs and those things for years, right? and then you're judging me on a negligible issue. That is why those countries are going to crumble, right? Because it is not right and it's not fair what been happening, right? But that's what I'm saying too, right? You the Quran makes that, and it is in this context, the world of war, world at war, right? That I would say, hey, that five wife thing become permissible because you know why, right? Hey, if it's in a state, the world is in a if the world everybody happy at peace, then they can say, hey, I find a partner, be happy, content, whatever. Two people, right? But if it is a world at war, right, and you have no choice but to accommodate five wives, five women who you choose to call as wives, right? And hey, you're doing that, ain't nothing is wrong with that in that context, right? But it goes deeper than that in a Western context if you're analyzing the situation, right? To say, hey, when we go asking, hey, well, could you provide this? Could you provide all this? Because in the Western world, because people don't have the worries and the issues to battle with that Muslim countries been battling for all their life, right? Westerners tend to be safe, secure, right? Safe, secure all the time, right? You're safe, secure, you love, you're nurtured, you're grow, right? You don't battle the kind of issues Middle Eastern people battle, right? So in that context, is a context that really only I like a judge because in that context is like, yeah, you and me, I included myself because I in the West Indies, right? I didn't have to, I never had to run from bombs, that kind of thing, right? So I could sit here and be comfortable on my bed and say, hey, well, hey, I ask Muslim men, hey, could you provide equally for five women? Could you love five women? Could you have sex with five women the same, right? But it don't matter in the grander scheme of life because we never had to battle the kind of issues that they had. We had certain battles, yeah, but it's in our Western context, right? Our battles were fought in our Western context. England people battle white people problems, right? We battle like Caribbean problems. Americans battle American problems, right? We never had to actually battle Middle Eastern problems, right? Like people getting blown up at like it's a everyday thing and is normal, right? So hey, so that's why I actually full on supported Muslims in this war because the realities that they have lived, right, is not the realities that we live at all, right? In fact, if people choose to pick up a gun here and fight other people, is really based on your individual choice to do it, right? Like, let me use this for example. I don't really know love until true reality, right? Or what is be going on there and how people is be shooting up the place and thing, right? And it's a robbery and thing is a normal thing. I don't know on other parts of the country to wherever, right? But here, right? That's an individual choice. You have to do that, right? In countries where your environment is just bombs and fire and these kind of things, and you don't have a choice but to exist in the middle of the environment, right? You literally don't have a choice because your country, that is your city, that's your country, and that's the nature of the place there, right? Is a external thing happening, right? That's why I'm telling people, hey, if you're in a place where these like murders, all these things, these things is your choice, and you actually have our ability. Where in those countries, you are the minor one, right? The countries is actually fighting wars, right? And people in there doesn't have a choice, right? That is why the onus is really on the leaders of this country to really stop it and stop it ASAP. I mean, and as soon as possible, right? The onus is on the leaders of this country to stop waging these wars, right? Stop. Like I immediate stopped it, right? Because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It really demonstrates any incapacity to lead, right? It really demonstrates any senselessness, chaos. Nothing good comes out of it ever. Nothing good comes of it ever, right? And people just have to be going through these cycles over and over and over because of stupidity, right? Because of leadership stupidity, right? So cultural things, hey, put aside these things, hey, whether somebody could have somebody allowed to have five wives or not, care for this thing, right? That what I tell earlier, I could only give my view, right? And my view, and me coming and talking about this, right? In a world at war, or me coming and talking about romance, or giving birth to CHRIST. And nobody died for my sins. Me coming and talking about romance and giving birth to that figure, or giving birth to this chosen child, and people fighting on that behalf and all kind of thing. It don't make sense in our world at war. And that's why I say it's only when people stop giving energy to that reality, stop feeding into that reality, stop doing those things, then you could have a conversation. Hey, Vijaya chosen as Mary, right? Only then, right? But I can't be chosen as that figure, and I will never choose to be chosen as that figure. If leaders in the country, Trump, whoever, in the Middle East, everybody, England, until I stop the foolishness, right? I will never accept that rule, right? I will never accept that rule until each leader in every country come to the senses and say, hey, what we've been doing in the past and what we're continuing to do, right, throughout history, right, and the present is senseless chaos, senseless murder, and senseless wars, right? So that's why I actually and I tell myself is that I know I would have boiled down to actually supporting this thing at the end of the day, right? I tell myself that hey, at the end of the day, I gonna end up. I tell myself I didn't know how it was going to happen, right? But I tell myself, hey, I can actually end up supporting that reality, right? The Quran reality with the prophet wives and all that, because they are the ones in the country, right, who battling them kind of real world wars, right? When English countries, Western countries, right, fighting to war. You safe and secure, but fighting what? Right? Fighting what? Like me, I on my bed here, right? So it make no sense for me to come and talk, right? It make no sense for me to come and talk about what Muslim men or Muslim women should be doing, right? That only makes it our opinion, right? It only makes it our opinion. It doesn't make it our reality because I don't know your reality, right? So that's what we're saying, right? So I know that I would end up in this situation, but like I say, it's not something I would want for myself, right? And it's not something I would ever make a joke about, really, right? But is something that's contextual, circumstantial, and is actually based on a system, right? It's based on a system, right? A system of provision, right? My issue really and this come down to the Western world and Western influence and thing, right? Hey, how when I say I not really interested in that because I know that warped people with psychologically deranged thinking, right? Who if you have five wives, you're going to use that as your advantage sexually, right? You're going to use that. You want to use that to fulfill all your sexual fantasies, or if you want to use that to fulfill orgies, sex this, sex that, fantasies, fetishes, all this kind of thing. And that's where really my problem come in with that five wife thing, right? That is what, because when they try to twist the word of God now, right? God saying, hey, this is permissible under the context. You could provide for one, two, three, four, five wives equally, right? You provide for them, provision, right? Provision, that's what it means, right? But when it have people out there with very, very warped ass thinking, right? And our evil reality that we're living in, I want to twist the words of God to make it permissible for you, both male and females in the situation, to do all kind of warped up kind of thing, right? In the name of five wives and thing, right? Then that make the word of God twisted, the word of Allah twisted, right? So that is my take on this conversation. Right? That being said, well, yeah, probably plenty of people on earth need to talk, right? So have a blessed one, everybody.